They say money is the root of all evil, but in my experience, money is just a magnifying glass. It takes what's already in a person's heart and multiplies it by 1,000. If you're generous, wealth makes you a philanthropist. If you're selfish, wealth turns you into a monster. My name is Arthur. I'm 75 years old, and I spent the last 5 decades building a real estate empire worth just over $1 billion. I gave my 3 children everything money could buy: the best schools, luxury cars, seed money for their businesses, and a network that opened every door in the world. But as I reached the autumn of my life, sitting alone in a silent mansion with dozens of empty rooms, a terrifying doubt began to keep me awake. If I didn't have a penny in my pocket, which one of them would open their door for me? Welcome to a story that will make your blood boil and warm your heart at the same time. Today, we're talking about the fog of wealth, the poison of greed, and the day I decided to destroy my own life as a fake to find the painful truth about my own blood. I had 3 children. Richard, the eldest, was a hedge fund shark, a man who measured people's value by their bank balance. Victoria, the middle child, was a ruthless socialite, living for appearances and the covers of high society magazines. And then there was the youngest, Leo. In our family, Leo was the embarrassing whisperer, the black sheep, the failure. He refused a seat at my company to become a high school history teacher. Working with underprivileged kids, he lived in a rented-to-bedroom apartment and drove a 10-year-old car. For years, Richard and Victoria treated him with a thinly veiled disdain. At 75, feeling the weight of age and the fear of being surrounded by vultures disguised as heirs, I made the most drastic decision of my life. I called my trusted lawyer and we drew up a plan. We created a perfect legal smokescreen. We would simulate that one of my major offshore investments had collapsed, dragging down my entire net worth, freezing my accounts, and leaving me with astronomical debts. For all practical purposes, I would be a completely bankrupt man on the verge of investigation. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I put on an old suit, grabbed a single battered leather suitcase, and began my journey. My first stop was Richard's mansion. When he opened the door and I told him the story of my ruin, I saw the color drain from his face. It wasn't worry for my health or my emotional state. The panic in his eyes was purely about the contagion. He left me standing in the marble foyer, refusing to even take me into the living room. "Dad, do you realize what this does to my image?" Richard hissed. "I have billionaire clients. If they find out my father went bust and is under investigation, my stocks will plummet." I swallowed hard, staying in character. "Son, I have nowhere to go. The banks took the house. I just need a room for a few weeks until this is resolved." His response cut my soul like a razor. "Dad, the house is full. The nanny sleeps in the guest room. Look, I can have my secretary look for a nursing home, one of those state-funded ones. It's the safest place for you now. Don't come to my office. Reporters might be following me." And just like that, my firstborn slammed the door in my face. With a bleeding heart, I took a taxi to Victoria's penthouse. Her reaction was even more visceral. She didn't even let me up the main elevator. She met me in the lobby. When she heard the $2 billion had evaporated, she started crying not for me, but for her trust fund. "What about the kids' private school, Dad? How could you be so irresponsible at 75? She screamed. When I asked for shelter, her refusal was swift and cruel. "Dad, I host charity dinners every week. What will my guests think if they see you living here in a tiny room? You ruined our name. Do what Richard said. The state home in St. Helena has spots. It's depressing, but it's what's left for you." I was destroyed. The cold that night didn't come from the rain. It came from the realization that I had raised monsters in designer suits. I walked several blocks to Leo's simple neighborhood. His building didn't even have a doorman. I climbed 3 flights of stairs and knocked. Leo opened. The door wearing comfortable clothes stained with whiteboard markers. When he saw my state wet, hunched over, holding an old suitcase, he didn't ask about stocks. He didn't ask about the inheritance. He didn't complain about the family image. He simply pulled me inside and gave me a tight hug. Dad, what happened? You're freezing. Come to the kitchen. I'm making soup, he said, taking my wet coat. While I ate the warm soup, I told him the same lie. I said I had lost everything. Leo held my hand across the small formica table. There were tears in his eyes, but it was pure empathy. Dad, the money never mattered, Leo said firmly. The apartment is tiny, but you're taking my room. I'll sleep on the sofa bed for as long as it takes. My home is your home. We're going to be okay. I spent 30 days living in Leo's small apartment. For that month, I wasn't a billionaire CEO. I was just a father. We laughed, watched baseball on an old TV, and he never once complained about the extra expense. On the 31st day, I put on my best suit and asked Leo to accompany me to a downtown address. We stopped in front of my company's skyscraper, the building my other children thought I had lost. We went up to the boardroom. Richard and Victoria were already there, summoned by my lawyer under the pretext of resolving the father's debts. When I walked through the door, perfectly dressed, and took my seat at the head of the mahogany table, the silence was deafening. Calm down, I said, looking into the wide eyes of Richard and Victoria. The money is fine. The accounts were never blocked. It was all a test to see what would happen to your father if his bank balance hit 0. Silence. I barked when they tried to hug me. You weren't worried. You were disgusted. You too, who were raised in luxury on my sweat, sent me to the cheapest state home to protect your image. I turned to Leo. But you, my son, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You didn't hesitate. You gave me your bed, your food, and your love when I had nothing left to offer. The lawyer opened the leather folder. This morning, I announced I signed a new, irrevocable will. Richard and Victoria, you are officially disinherited. You have 30 days to vacate the company-owned houses you live in. You will have to learn to live on your own money. I looked at my youngest, Leo. The entire estate, the $2 billion, the properties, and the foundation now belongs entirely to you. You have a heart that money couldn't corrupt, and I know that in your hands, this empire will do good. Have you ever seen anything like this? What would you do if your parents lost everything tomorrow? Share this story with your family groups and see who stays quiet and who comments. Real wealth isn't kept in the bank, it's kept in your character. This has been spilled at dinner. See you in the next story.